Thanks for staying tuned. Rosevaline Uzoma Obia, a dietitian, is here to tell us more about food hygiene. You're welcome on the program.
Thank you for having me.
We just watched a bit about food vendor, and the expert spoke extensively about the water they used in washing our plates and how they handle our food generally. I know it's not exactly so in our homes, or can we have such extreme condition in our homes as well?
Of course, what we saw on that video clip concerning what these food vendors do to our food is something that happened in our contemporary society today. But you won't say this is what is obtainable in all homes. You can only speak for your own home as an individual. But before I will go deep into what happens in our different homes, the society needs to understand what this word food hygiene means. What is food hygiene? Food hygiene is the unwholesome practices, unwholesome lifestyle. Someone will say, why define it as unwholesome practices and life? Because it is something that, if it's not a part of you as an individual, something being a part of you means it's something you've grown with, something that has become something you've seen from somewhere, and it grows while you're growing. And it's something that you cannot, stay away from. It's an addiction. So being a part of you could be that these unwholesome practices have become something that you cannot resist. In that sense, it becomes an unwholesome practice and can lead to food contamination, lead to food poisoning, and even death. A lot of people do not know that some of these unhygienic practices, as I can put it now, can expose them to death. How can it do that? Because over time, when these things expose us to diseases and germs, it introduces us to medical issues. And when it introduces us to medical issues, these medical issues, when not treated over time, can cause more damages and lead to death. So it's something that is very, very important when it comes to our health, food hygiene.
Truly, everything starts from the home. Some families do rotational plate washing, and when is the turn of a particular child to wash the plates? Because the child wants to watch a particular program on the television, the child just rush into the kitchen, rinse the plate, and when they use soap and sponge to wash the plates, they tend not to rinse them properly. What are the consequences of remnants of soap and food debris after washed on the stomach of a person when consumed?
Some of these children are so engrossed with whatever they are watching, just like you said, television. Imagine you putting on an interesting movie or cartoon for a child, and you're still at the same time sending that child to wash plates. You know that the child can certainly face the master that excites him or her. Now, what am I trying to say? The simple thing is, when we send errands to our children, we should guide them. We should stay and ensure that they are there to, carry out these assignments that they've been given to them. The essence of doing this is also a part of training. Leaving food debris, especially remnants of these soaps, it's very unhealthy because this food and this detergent, they are two different materials, and I always call the detergent the outer bodies. Why do I call it so? These detergents have been built for this purpose. The purpose of, they are hard, so even if they are in liquid form, the ingredients that make up these detergents are certainly different from the ingredients that make up our food. You have things like the caustic soda, the glycerin, the tensapon. Each of these materials that are used in making detergents are heavy. Some of them are even high concentrated acid. And imagine introducing such things, they become toxins to the body, and over time, cause malfunctioning of the different organs of the body. They can even become build burdens for the kidneys and livers to function right. So it is so dangerous to bring in, leave our plates halfway washed. It is dangerous for you to bring in some of these materials to our food. At the end of the day, the body begins to yearn for help, cries for help, because in one way or the other something has gone wrong.
That takes us to this conception people have about washing their fruits and even vegetables with soap. How good is that practice?
Yes, a lot of people do that because they see salt as a cleaning agent, and because of the coarseness of salt, and salt on its own as a nutrient has a lot of properties it contains. So when people have, whether they're adding a pinch of salt to whatever they are washing or they are pouring the whole lot of salt in it, the acidic content, they believe, cleanses the fruits and the vegetables. But another thing that salt does is that it softens some of these vegetables, it softens some of these fruits. Another thing people do again is they leave it over time. When they come, they let the salt soak into that particular food or fruits. It is not hygienic and healthy. The reason they tell you wash whatever fruits and vegetables in clean running water, fresh running water. The essence of doing this is if you can't wash, you shred. Shred neatly. As you're washing, you easily see these dirts coming out from these particular foods that you're washing in your water, especially when the water is not stagnant, when it's clean, it's from a running water. You wash, you clean off, you wash, you clean off. Then another thing people do is they add detergents and soap to the fruits. In fact, they've gone beyond that. Like one day I was passing by, I met someone using detergent, one of these liquid detergents to wash melon seed, that's the egusi itself, so that they can get whitening appearance of that egusi or the whiteness, improve the whiteness. But those things are dangerous to the health. All of these are unwholesome practices. The more toxins you introduce to your health, the more work you're giving to yourself as an individual and to the body on its own. So if we want to live healthy, we should curtail some of these unwholesome practices. That's the best way and the best practice.
A couple of years back, we heard that a whole family died of food poisoning because a wall gecko fell into their pot of soup. Must we finish our food each time we prepare it? And if we don't, what are the best way we can preserve our food?
The best way to preserve our food is in, with containers, neat containers. You look for clean containers with covers. Their lids should properly cover the food. And then I would advise people listening, why do we need to leave our foods in pot? Some people do that a whole lot because at times when you leave food in pot, except for foods that you want to ferment, like the cereals and grains, you want to ferment over time, as you're keeping them, you're soaking them, you're washing them off immediately, there is something that is covering that particular food because it's a grain. But once it's a cooked meal, leaving them in a pot over time is exposing them to what they call spoilage. That food is certainly going to spoil. And when it becomes spoiled, it becomes sour and unhealthy to the health. And because we want to save ourselves, the expenses on what we have prepared, you see, some families begin to add ingredients to improve the taste of that food. All of these things are dangerous to the health. So when you prepare your meals, except for meals that you're dispensing, now when you dispense that and you're dishing out these foods, let's ensure that the foods are consumed, finished, and the plate is you do not remain food. Then for the foods you remain in the pot, please transfer them from the pot and dish them out right. Cover it accurately and tight. Then if in a situation the person does not have a refrigerator, because a lot of people will say, I don't have fridge, will you give me money to buy fridge? And know the things they're expensive. You can also use a clean bowl with a water in it. Place your meal in your food that has been prepared in the water. As your hot meal, changes the texture of that water, becomes hot, you change the water as well and use a fresher water. The sense of doing that is that as you're changing your water over time, it's retaining the temperature of that particular meal that you have placed in the water. Then another way is in a leaf. We discourage the use of polythenes and nylons because of what is being used to make them. We are not there when these things are being manufactured, and now we are avoiding, aside the fact that we are controlling what we consume, controlling what we also use to serve these meals, our pots and spoons. Same way with these nylons and the rest. Today we see we don't use nylons for our moimo, we don't use nylons, we use containers that have covers or silicones that have covers. Now that is how it should be in our meals. When we neatly package our foods, we find out that these foods tend to become preserved the way we preserve them, and we end up not having any issues at all with our health.
This question may sound so ordinary, but some people don't even remember to wash their hands before snacking and sometimes even eating. There's this saying that dirty no dey kill African man. How true is that?
They said they know they kill African man, but yet we're having a lot of African people in the hospital. We're having a lot of them patronizing the doctors and the rest of them. That does not mean going to the hospital is a big issue. It's just that as individuals, it's needed that we go for our daily checkups. But that saying, it's a deceptive saying. Why do I call it a deceptive saying? It's a saying that has made people so relaxed with some of the practices that they do. Why would you tell an African man that they know they kill a man? At the end of the day, he's continuing his notion of, unwholesome attitude and lifestyle, unwholesome, practices that are not good for his health, especially when it comes to food hygiene. There's something that this current pandemic did to the whole Africans and the world at large. It made us be conscious of our health, especially when it comes to hand washing. A lot of people, including me, on a normal day, would you just sit down and wash your hands or use sanitize on your hands? It's not possible. But this is what it has come to be. We became so conscious of what we do because we understand that from our hands, germs can pass on. That is cross-contamination, part of what we call food contamination. It passes on from our hands down to the food, down to our mouth. So these things we don't know. We don't understand this transportation that has gone wrong. In other words, when it comes to our hygiene, it's very important as individuals that we take cognizance of what we do, how we prepare our meals, especially hygiene when it comes to our food environment, preparation, preservation, how we process them, and how these foods are being packaged. Because at the end of the day, this all boils down to adequate nutrition that we preach. When we are unable to get it right, we tend to expose ourselves to food insafety. There is this unsafeness when it comes to food. There is insecurity when it comes to food. There is this food diseases are everywhere, foodborne diseases are everywhere. So let's be very careful and understand that the registered dietitian and nutritionists are everywhere to guide us aright. Because we should know that when we live a healthy life, we also make the nation wealthy.
Indeed, a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
We now go on a short break. Better you continues shortly.